Frank's been in this position 50 billion times. Frank in the standing guillotine.
Back to a front headlock, locked up the guillotine, trying to get him to his cage, arches back.
Oh, he's in bad shape. Wow.
Nice takedown.
Nice attempt at using the cage.
Trouble. So we're for a scramble here. Oh, gets his back taken.
On the back, hooks in, flattens out Shelley.
This might be
Big squeeze. He nods and a tap. Frank Watts. Rear naked choke.
Be aiming for Chris's body when I do this. About 50% power, then like that part. And Chris is just going to catch, just like this. He's not going to try to smack down, just a slight catch. That's all it really is. So go back, over here, jab, kick like that, okay? Good job, son.
I'm getting shot.
Chris Barnett, Green Dragon, Tai Chi and Qigong. Today I wanted to interview Frank Watts. Frank Watts is an MMA fighter.
I fought for Extreme Fighting Challenge, Alaska Fighting Championship, Rage in the Cage, quite a few over in the Midwest area.
Nice, so that's at least 4 that you named.
I've got over 20 fights, so there's more.
Over 20 fights, yeah. So the fights that I saw were the AFC.
Correct.
Okay, correct, very good. So when did you start training?
Probably when I was 20 years old, so back in 2000 and I think probably about 2003, right after boot camp, so yeah.
Okay. What branch of military were you
Air
in?
Force.
Air Force. What made you start training?
To be truthful, I was always involved like in a type of like martial arts when I was younger.
Mhm.
So my parents put me in traditional martial arts like Tang Sudo when I was, I think, 12 or 13. Did that for 3-4 years, got my black belt.
Mhm.
And then one of my friends came over actually, and his cousin trained at a different school, went to a different school, and he actually was in the wrestling program there. And then you know how teenagers get, a black belt wrestler, and
Mhm.
so of course I was had lethal weapons, and so he decided to pick me up and slam me, and I couldn't do nothing about it. And then he did it repeatedly 3-4 times, and then I left doing traditional martial arts after that because I wanted this new thing, because this was new, a new avenue for me more than anything else. This is pre like UFC tough, before UFC got famous from that standpoint. It was still viewed as a barbaric cage fighting with jump cane, called it that way.
I remember that period, yeah. Let me go back for just a second. What does Tai Sudo include? Is it a striking art mainly?
Tang Sudo is a Korean martial arts that was Chuck Norris, because he was in the Air Force. He did security police, also known as security forces, and that's actually a career fight in the military. So he brought that over when he was in Korea back in the day, I guess, because Chuck Norris is ageless at this point. So it's one of his traditional martial arts.
Nice, nice. So getting taken down those couple times, kind of like a wake-up call.
Oh, complete total wake-up call, because there's a certain point when it's not reality. Like you can practice your katas, you can practice your perfect one strike, your crescent kicks, your knife hands, traditional immobilizing techniques, but in reality, not very functional.
Yeah, yeah.
Great for form, great for technique, great for discipline, but from a functionality standpoint, it wasn't there.
Yeah, as a side note, that's kind of what brought me here, is I do Tai Chi, and there's a lot of good forms, there are partner drills, things like that, but there's not a lot of reality based interaction, I would say. Some people maybe, perhaps, yeah, I've seen it, but on a whole scale, not really, not too much. So did you always want to be a fighter?
No, actually. So it kind of happened inadvertently. I was in the military, did a couple of jiu-jitsu classes. So right after that incident happened with my friend and his cousin, I seeked out like jiu-jitsu essentially at that point. I found this place in Grayson, Kentucky, which is like 45 minutes where I lived at. Don't even remember the guy's name, but it was like basic jiu-jitsu. I took a Saturday class for about 3-4 months and had a basic grasp. This is mount, this is side mount, that type of deal. Shipped off to boot camp, got to my tech school, completed tech school, then went to my base, and thought didn't cross my mind, 19 years old, and and we were downtown Boise. We were driving around because the base was 50 miles away, and so we were there for the weekend and saw a flyer like on a post that said cage fighting at this truck stop area, and it said UFC style, UFC cage fighting. So we checked it out a few weeks later. Got a few laughs out of it because nobody knew what they were doing. And there was a guy behind me that said, "Hey, I own a gym. Go and check it out." And so the following weekend, me and two of my buddies, we drove there and just went from there.
Nice. Yeah. So obviously you enjoyed it to some degree to keep going back.
Yeah, I enjoyed it to some degree. So it's always good to be the hammer, not the nail. So 22 fights, 18 wins, 4 losses, 9-1 as an amateur, 9-3 as a pro. It's always a learning curve in that time period. As soon as you think that you're starting to reach a certain level, you train with someone or you fight someone that's above you at that standpoint. And that's why there's so many different layers to this sport, to where now people doing it now, they treat it this way, but back in mid 2000s, you could have someone that was like a one discipline fighter, like a straight stand-up fighter that was really good with the basic takedown defense, or someone like a really good wrestler, and those styles would dominate other styles. But now it's so well-rounded where children are being raised like this, kids are, just like how traditional boxing is. Like boxers don't start boxing when they're 18, 19 years old and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be a boxer." They're learning how to box when they're 6, 7 years old, and they do that their whole youth, so their body morphs into that type of machine from that standpoint. And so this generation now is getting into that avenue because there's so many different layers to the sport.
Yeah, I remember in I think it was '93, the first UFC. I was probably one of the first people that was really watching all the fights back then. And like you said, it was deemed as barbaric. But the people that got exposed to it now, they're raising the kids, and like you said, they're bringing them up and giving them all the skill sets that really help them out in the sport.
Yeah, there's jiu-jitsu gyms everywhere now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that wasn't there 10 years ago.
What was your training like when you were doing your fighting career?
It evolved over the time period because when I was in the military, I was stationed in Idaho first, and then I went to Anchorage, Alaska after that. And then that was pretty much the end of those are the 2 time periods and 2 areas that I fought in. In Idaho is the whole northwest area, so you have Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, Nevada, Montana even. And then when I was in Alaska, it was Alaska, and then I actually Halifax, Nova Scotia, places like that, over in Canada, which is the far east coast. So training, like when I first started, was wow, I'm really gonna date myself. This is pre-YouTube, just from that side. So you had to search everywhere you could, like online, and actually wait for shipping, like 1, 2, 3 weeks to get product, not Amazon one day click.
Right.
So you find some stuff, you learn basic information off of it, and so a lot of it was like more trial by error, to be honest. And I'm lucky I was not hurt from that standpoint. Never thought about it too much then, because 20, 21, 22 years old, in the military, in shape, insurance, paycheck every 2 weeks. So I didn't think about the whole ramifications, like if I broke my arm or my leg, or if I really got a bad concussion. I was very fortunate that I stayed in shape, and during that time period, I would pick something that I feel like my opponent would not be very good at, and then I would work to try to exploit that. So back in those days, a lot of individuals have very weak takedown defense, so they'd come in like haymakers, 1-2s, or even kickboxing individuals, and it wasn't too hard to take down, and then like the ground and pound striking aspect.
It's pretty much over after that.
Dirty boxing, getting them clinch, and then whenever I fight a good grappler, I was like, all right, this guy's probably not gonna have good stand-up. So I worked on different stand-up aspects of the fight, like, okay, so he's gonna shoot for a takedown like this, I'm gonna sidestep, I'm gonna chop a couple leg kicks, slow him down, then I'm gonna start pumping a jab in the face, and then if that really slows him down, then I'm gonna start like letting the leather be thrown at that point, like hard rights, hard lefts, and then when he's on defense, yank him down, and then make him feel overwhelmed at his strength from that standpoint. And so I dissected opponents that way. And so when you're in that fight mindset or that fight life, you travel to these local events, you travel 2, 3, 4 hours just to watch these fights, because you may run into these individuals.
So you didn't have fight tapes, you would have to go and visually actually observe.
That, and then, word of mouth, like like, hey Frank, we saw this guy that you're fighting. He goes for leg locks all the time. It's okay, leg lock guy.
Mm-hmm.
So guy goes for a leg lock. You're defending him from that standpoint.
Yeah. Nice. How many hours a day did you train?
So besides being in the military, which everything's like if you look at I'm in the military, it's not like your infantry like back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you're running miles and miles every day. You do your job training, or you're working your job from that standpoint, and you have people that are truck drivers, fuel specialists, admin functions, maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that job 8, 10, 12 hours a day. You have your PT you have to do each week, which consists of like push-ups, runs, sit-ups, which is really nothing too crazy from that standpoint. So besides the basics, I would lift weights 3-4 days a week. I would do some attempt at jiu-jitsu 2-3 days a week, and then some attempt to stand up 2-3 days a week, hitting the heavy bag. This is back beginning time period, early 2000s.
Okay.
Early 2000s. And then it has evolved over the time period, because that was the infancy time period whenever I fought in Idaho. And then that's where I basically taught myself from that standpoint, where I was lucky really not to get hurt. And the individuals I trained with, they were wanting to learn, and so essentially I was instructing from that standpoint and taught basics. And we had a lot of fun fighting that Northwest area, piling 5-6 people in a vehicle, driving 8 hours to fight, stay at the hotel the night before, have your fight, party it up that night, and it was a fun time period.
So you had a little group going on.
Oh yeah, you had a crew. And then when I got up to Alaska, I trained at this gym called Anchorage Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. They originated with Gracie Baja. They split from there, formed their own gym right prior to me arriving there. And then it was really hardcore grapplers. And this is when I learned there's levels at Jiu Jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I do MMA type deal. And when I started doing Jiu Jitsu there, I was getting mauled. Like I didn't know basic sweep submissions in the gi. People can see it, they can tell a grappler from that standpoint. And so I was at a point where I was like, all right, I had my, not 8, 9, 10 fights amateur wise, had a very good run at it. But now I'm running into individuals that really know what they're doing, training at this. Because it went from 2002 to 2000, I think I went up there in 2008 or 9. So that's 6-7 years, it boomed because the Ultimate Fighter came out. I remember being in Mountain Home, Idaho, and that first fight happened, or that last fight with Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And watching that fight, I was like, this sport's never gonna be the same again.
Right.
And they started replaying it. Next thing you know, it is what it is today.
Yeah.
And then that's when a lot of people got into it. Gyms were able to expand, commercialize to an extent, but keep those roots. So they had a lot of those hardcore gyms that can go from a 1,200 square foot location up to a 5,000 square foot location literally overnight, because you have angel investors, you have people interested in the sport. Your
Mm-hmm.
classes go from having a 40 signed membership up to 300, like literally within a month or two. So it was like a boom, essentially, a big oil boom. And when I got up there in Alaska, I was like, all right, so these are my choices. One, obviously there's levels, and I know I'm a step behind. Either I can try to compete, but I have to train and actually start over from that standpoint, or two, say I have my fun and go from there. So I decided to keep training in that aspect of it. And when I was up there, I would go to the gym probably about 5 days a week, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
And 3-4 nights of straight kickboxing, 3-4 nights of straight jiu-jitsu mixed. It's like an hour jiu-jitsu, hour kickboxing. And then I would lift weights in the morning, so probably about pretty hard 6 days a week, 2 days at that point.
Yeah. And that's what it seemed like. That's what I saw, the type of training that, as I watched her fight, I said, he must train a lot. Yeah.
It's that muscle memory. You want to create that muscle memory, so that way if someone takes a faint jab as they step in, you're able to slip to the outside and throw overhand right and you chop down with the left kick, and it's just muscle memory at that point to where you react appropriately.
Mm-hmm. I think you're doing a good job of instilling that in us with the drills and things that you teach us. It's actually very logical, intelligent, the way that you teach. Kyle does it the same. Taking one move and then getting people to understand that move and then building on it in a progressive manner, that it makes sense going from striking to the grappling to the ground, and then most times a finish on the ground. So I really appreciate that, that you bring that to the class. I want to talk about, so you had a decision of do I continue? Do I fight? Or do I just say, okay, I had my fun, and so you continue to fight? And that was like, I think maybe a decision of the heart. As I was watching your fights, you told me that you had 6 fights and you lost 1. And I didn't see the one you lost. I watched 5 of your fights. But one I thought you were going to lose, and I think it was against Boykin. It got to be a pretty good battle. But it showed me how much heart and determination you have, like the warrior spirit that you possess. Because when people get challenged, sometimes, you know, in their mind, they're ready to make a decision. It's either give up, do I give up? Or do I plow through, do I go forward? You know, so obviously there was no option to give up. You just do what you can to win and endure those type of obstacles. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift. It really is. A little more backstory about that fight. It's kind of not good to say it this way, but I didn't take the guy seriously at all. And I was praying pretty hard. I was not training how I should have been for that fight. But then going into that fight, like after the first, I think 30 seconds, that first takedown attempt that he was able to stuff, I was like, I'm in a fight. Like, this isn't going to be like a pushover from that standpoint. So the mindset did shift to where it's like do or die. And so it's like, there's no way I'm going out like this. So it's pretty rough. And during that second round, I was able to give a nice little left right and then get the takedown and submit him from there. But there was times during that fight that it happens really quick, but it happens really slow, if that makes sense.
Oh, I know all about it. Yeah.
To where you're in a bad spot, and then the thought goes through your mind like, hey, this is it, just turtle up, ref's gonna stop the fight, you're fine, you're not gonna get hurt. But in that same mindset, or that same time, you have another internal conversation that says, forget this, you know, push through. And so when those shifts happen, that's when you determine like who you are as a person.
Exactly.
And so quotes, inspirational quotes, they're everywhere nowadays, especially on the internet. There's 2 that really stick out to me. One is be a monster, and then learn how to control it. I really like that one. That's how I train. Like, be a monster, know how to control it. And the other one, I do not know where I'm looking this from, but I've heard it for like the last 10, 15 years. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
So those 2 like really stick out from that second point, but be a monster, but learn how to control it.
Yeah. Speaking of monster, so I sent, or I showed one of your fights to my brother. He wrestled, very good wrestler, and he also does BJJ. He's in LA, and you did a hell of a monster move where you caught a kick, you had the leg here, and I don't know if you had his neck, but somehow you picked him up and slammed him right down. And my brother said that was a monster move. That was major.
That was straight out of the WWF. Or
WWE. Right.
So the guy, Zach Shelley, I believe his name was. He was a couple-time state wrestling champion up in Anchorage, Alaska. Trained at a rival gym. Talked some serious smack. I'm not good at that. I'm like, okay, cool, see you tomorrow. And he told me I couldn't take him down. He was like, no way I could take him down, you know, because I really never ever trained like wrestling like in middle school or high school. I learned it doing MMA.
That surprises me, by the way.
A lot of drills. Like today, when we do class, we're gonna do some of those drills. So a lot of drills to create that muscle memory, and it helps. You know, I'm built like a little brick and short, so my muscle reflexes are quick from that standpoint. So he's talking all this stuff. We get out there to go fight, and we go to touch gloves, and you know, he says a couple pretty vulgar things, and I respond a little bit, and I'm like, I just want to slam him. Like, that's my mind. I just want to pick him up and slam him, and I want to feel his response. And so we go around, throw a couple jabs, a little leg kick, then he returns the little leg kick, and I was able to drop in a little bit and grab a half single, and so he's hopping on one leg, and I was going to step through, drop the right leg, and just do a simple takedown, but at this point he's hopping on his foot. Then I'm like, he's very light, and so I timed one of those hops. I timed the hop, and up we went, and literally, I mean, you saw the video. He was like way over my head at this point, and you smacked on the map. So then if you...
Do you think I can put a clip of that in the video and show it and not get in trouble?
Probably.
Okay, I will show you what he's talking about.
Just say credit the AFC for this clip, and I don't know how YouTube does their copyrights. You're probably fine from that standpoint.
Back in the house, leg kick. Kilowatts. hope he doesn't get mad.
Great down, Shelley. Oh, I'm sorry, Frank, but Shelley pops right back up. Shelley, oh, with the slam. Let's see what Shelley, let's see what the rest of it has off his back.
I just give it the credit. But yeah, so I pick him up in the air and down he goes, and you can hear the crowd, like once they catch up to what's going on, and then when the slam hits, so he hits the ground, he utters a couple F words, and I feel like a little spazzy, like a little freak out moment type deal.
Yeah.
And then I think about 3 minutes later, he was tapping out after probably about half a dozen elbows on a rear naked choke.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, when you were elbowing him, you trapped his arm under your leg, and that's a common move that when you and I roll, you catch me in that all the time, and you know, hopefully in the future I'll be able to avoid that when people try to do that to me.
Isolate body parts.
And you feel so helpless right there. Yeah. Going back, so when you took him down, I heard the announcer say, "Oh, they call him Snack Pack or something like that. Oh, Snack Pack shakes it off or something." I'm like, no, he didn't. He did not shake that off.
No, he was broke right then. I felt the break, and then it just continued. But yeah, he shook it off after he was in the back. So.
So this leads me into something too. So as I mentioned, this is a Tai Chi channel, and I told my viewers long ago that I'm trying to move towards realistic martial arts and things like that. But some of the things that you do actually remind me of Tai Chi, and what you just said made me think about it too, how when he hopped, you used the momentum of his hop to take him out. And so we actually call that borrowing force, or borrowing another person's energy, which should be in all martial arts, right? Especially, I know it's in jiu-jitsu because you guys do it to me all the time. But there was something else you did in one of the fights that was very much like a move in Tai Chi. Somebody did a front kick at you, and you kind of moved back with the energy, and you caught his foot and scooped it up. Do you remember that fight? Do you know who that was in? I'll have to go back and see if I'll watch him again, and then I'll put that clip in here too. But in Chin style Tai Chi, they call that embrace the knee. So it's almost like you're embracing the knee and then you lift. So, but your timing on that was excellent. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know is how relaxed a high level jiu-jitsu practitioner is, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So whenever I roll with you, it's like, you're very relaxed. You allow me to do things, which really I set myself up, because you can just let me do what I want, and you'll just yield to it, and it'll create a situation that you'll just go into. And that's what a lot of Tai Chi masters strive to do, or in theory would like to do. So I think that's pretty great. Also, one of the things that you do is syncing energy, which is something that we do. And last week you were showing a takedown, where once you have the hook and you just kind of release or drop the weight and the person comes down, so you're not straining and using muscle, which is, I think, a very high level skill to have. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because in a way to look at it, I'm inherently lazy, and it's not a good thing to say, saying competing in sports and things like this part, but I'm training very hard to be lazy for that reason. So that way, whenever you're doing that takedown, you know how to use the technique, the leverage, the angles, your weight, where you're not exerting any extra force, and you're going from there, because essentially your body has an internal gas tank. And once you bleed that tank and go on fumes, then obviously that's no good. So if you're able to create shortcuts instead of having to go the whole race, and you create a shortcut, and you're saving that gas while they're burning that energy, then why not?
Yeah.
From that standpoint.
Pretty much maximizing your potential. So did you have to make weight for all your fights? Or?
Yes. So when I first started, I was walking around probably about 19, 20 years old, walking around 153, 154, pretty lean, and I fought at 155. And so I go in, don't have to make weight, I'm good to go. And then this is back fighting with a lot of individuals, like what I talked about earlier. I had a very poor takedown defense, poor jiu-jitsu, really crude bar fighting style haymakers. And then back in 2004, 2005, when that UFC Ultimate Fighter finale hit, and all of a sudden you have people coming out of the woodworks that were training at gyms. And so I'd still fight at 155, but they got tougher. And then the one guy I fought, John Gunderson, who fought in the UFC, he came out for the weigh-in. This is when I fought for Dome of Destruction in Tacoma, Washington. It was a 2-night event. Jeremy Horn was there, Josh Bergman, there's a few other pretty decent name people over there. So we go to the fight, and we go to weigh-in, and I'm like, holy hell, as we weigh in. I weigh in like 152. He weighs in a solid like 155. The guy's 4 inches taller than me, like ripped, huge. And then I'm thinking, this guy's gonna make 180 pounds the next day. And then I was like, all right, so it's going to be a very interesting fight. And so, you know, he had a smirk in his face, like this is going to be an easy win for him. And so, thank goodness I had probably about 9-10 amateur fights at that point where I've been hit a couple times, like hard, where I had to react and move. I had general ring awareness, and I could sense, like in his body mechanics, he was going for the home run. He was going for the highlight reel. He didn't want to do the double jab, circle outside, leg kick, takedown. He didn't want to do the not sexy, that's what I describe it. He wanted that highlight reel. He wanted that head kick, that big haymaker. And that's how I viewed that fight going out there. He threw a couple jabs, and then he went for a head kick. And then during that time period, he went to load up to go for another one. And this is my window. I stepped straight in, and I uncorked a straight right hand, and perfect picture timing, like side of the face, like knocked his head back into bobblehead doll. He fell over to a guillotine choke, power guillotine, choked him unconscious. 40 seconds, 30 seconds. And that's my last fight at 155. And so that's when I started looking online, how to make weight, how to diet.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was like restricting food, calorie count, cardio, and then I ended up finding this book called The Grappler's Guide, which talked about like calorie restriction, cardio, and going from that avenue. So I started fighting at 145. But then I wanted to put on weight to fight at 145 at a lower weight, which seems counterproductive. But I was about close to 160, but then I fought at 145, and I was a bigger 45 at that point. But I was a solid 160, and diet would consist of, so I would train pretty hard, and then about 6 weeks prior to the fight, that's when I would start calorie counting, because I was in that 15, 18 pound window. And so I want to drop down to be like 12, 13 pounds over. And then I cut the water weight through sauna, through sweatsuits, and through Abilene, and just like horrible 24
So kind of like the traditional weight cuts
part.
that were, yeah.
Yep. And then so I would get it to the high 50s, low 60s, and then I would count calories, and I would only count 1,800 calories. That's all I'd have for 2 weeks, and then 4 weeks out, and then weeks 3 through 4, I'd go down to 1,600. Then the last 2 weeks, for one whole week, I would go to 1,500. And then that last week, I would blend pretty much everything I ate, like kind of like almost like a liquid diet to an extent. And then I make weight, and then the next day after eating and rehydrating, I'm 160 pounds.
Okay. That's smart, yeah, kind of gradually
Yeah,
decreasing.
it was not a very fun 6 weeks. Those
No,
last
I'm
2
sure.
weeks, I was very cranky.
Yeah.
Very hangry, so that's what I describe it. So.
Yeah. What's your diet like now?
Oh man, I'm enjoying being old. I'm 37 now. I train, stay in shape, help some younger people. Always dreamed of eventually owning a gym. That was my end goal whenever I was fighting. Instead of like doing what I do now, where I do like operations management. So now I eat pretty healthy. I'm gonna paraphrase that. But like last night, I stopped at McDonald's and I got 10 chicken nuggets and a large fry. But I was also here for 2 hours, and then before I came in here, about 3 hours early, I was lifting weights at home. So I work out quite a bit still. I just don't count the calories like I used to, but I don't eat anything in excess. For breakfast, I have a protein usually, like eggs, turkey bacon, some type of healthy fruit, or some type of fruit. Lunch is usually like a salad because I'm on the go at work, and I have protein bars, Slim Fast shakes, tuna packets. Then I'll have like hamburgers, but it won't be like a traditional hamburger, like a hamburger salad. So I'll have a salad, like lettuce with a hamburger in there, chopped up, mustard, ketchup, tomato, like restricted.
Oh, a serious hamburger like that.
Yeah. So stuff like that. So pretty much my diet is probably about 70% like protein or fats, like 30% carbs. I don't snack on a lot of individual snacks, but the two things I do snack on are cookies and chocolate. And
You sound like me.
I don't do it every day though. Like
Yeah,
once a week,
yeah.
I'll sit down and eat like half a bag of cookies, and like I don't have 1 or 2 a day. Like I'll chew through a half a bag in like half a day, and then the next week I'll finish it off type deal. But for 5-6 days a week, I'm pretty good. You know, I have beers here and there and things like that. But overall, like your body is your machine. So if I'm still going to train and do things like this, where I want to start competing again, like in jiu-jitsu tournaments, then we're going to clean it up even better from that standpoint.
Right.
More in cycles.
Yeah. So I think most people don't eat clean 100% of their lives anyway. Especially if they're training, then they know they have something coming up, then they'll kind of clean it up a little bit for that time period.
Oh yeah, and like with dieting part, the easiest thing to do, like on a Sunday before the work week, prior to meeting my wife, back in the day, whenever I was dieting for fights and just dieting in general, I put a rack of chicken in with a rack of vegetables and portion my food out and have a Tupperware container for the week. And that's how you eat. Otherwise, you're eating out all the time. And you're gaining a half a pound this month, a pound next month, a half a pound, and 3 years later, you got an extra 30 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like we're running out of time. Speaking of your wife, though, does she watch your fights? Did she?
Oh, she met me in the after time.
Okay.
She calls this the before time. Because before she met me, that's when I was in the military, deployments, fighting, like all the things that would keep her up at night, just as we describe it.
Yeah.
Especially being gone in the Middle East for 6, 7, 8 months type deal, and she's at home waiting. So this is the before time. So she's seen a couple of videos, and she's like, "You get pretty hangry now. I can't imagine when you're dieting." So, but now she's getting accustomed to it because I told her I want to start competing again. And she's asking like what tournaments are, rules. She's watched some of the old videos. So she's got an interest in it. That's it.
Okay. One last question.
Yep.
Any advice for any youngsters who might want to do a career in fighting or even jiu-jitsu tournaments, things like that?
Have an exit strategy. Have an exit plan. This sport is violent. It's jiu-jitsu is supposed to be like what, the gentle art, I believe they call it, or
Soft art or gentle, yeah.
It's a violent sport. So have an exit strategy, have an exit plan. My exit strategy was, if I was 29 years old and I was not fighting in the UFC at that point, then I'm going to move on to the next phase of my life. At that point, I was 18-3, fought the Alaskan Fighting Championship, the one fight that you didn't see, fought for the 135 pound championship belt there. Prior to that, I went and tried out for the Ultimate Fighter. I was an alternate that didn't get the phone call to come up because nobody got hurt or medicals or whatever. There was 8 alternates, and I think 2 or 3 got called up. Going down there, doing the interview process, talked to Dana White, talked to Joe Silva. Joe Silva's the UFC matchmaker, and he said, win a regional belt, I'll bring it in. And so, boom. So I'm fighting for the 135 pound belt. And going into that fight, that's the only thing that was on my mind. And so this guy I trained with before, absolutely good guy. But I mean, training, I was always a step ahead. Going into that fight, I'm like, all right, I'm in the UFC next, I'm in the UFC next. And so lost the fight. It was a good, it's tough to take, let's describe it. Like he won, 25 minutes, we'd be bleeding hell out of each other. And I was exactly 29 years old. And it took me probably about 3 months, 4 months to actually get back to normal. We broke each other's nose, I cracked his rib, I hurt my knee, I had bones in my hands. I couldn't even, there's tongs at home to grow out like 2 weeks later. And it hurt, like it was bad. And at that point, I was like, all right, I gotta win a couple more fights before going to that avenue. And I was like, is this what I really want? Like, I'm 29 years old, I'm chasing that prize at the end of the tunnel, and so are thousands and thousands of other people. So I was at my exit strategy point. I could have pivoted and like delayed it, but I stuck with it. It worked out very well. I'm in a very good spot professionally, career-wise, job essentially. Met the love of my life. Things changed from that standpoint, but I miss it. Like it's always going to eat at me because that was my chance, and I came up short. And there's ways that I could have done things differently and better to prevent that from happening. It's a hard lesson to take, and hopefully, if I ever do get into training and coaching MMA fighters and stuff like that, I'll instill that into them. But have an exit strategy. Don't be that 35, 37-year-old trying to get that shot in the UFC fighting a 20-year-old kid. It never ends well.
Yeah, well, you had some good fights. I enjoyed watching them. I'll leave some links in the. Well, actually, it's on UFC Fight Pass, so if you have that, you can check them out. Thanks again. Thanks for coming in early. Thanks for talking with me, sharing part of your life. I want to thank Kyle Heido for letting me use the desk of leadership here and allowing us the time. All right, we'll check you out next time. Thank you.
Down with this right here. So we're here, boom, boom. Especially if they're not catching it right off the bat. As soon as you do it with someone once or twice, they're gonna pop feet type of hold. And it sets up different takedowns. So we're going here. Then I'm already like this right here. Jake's like, oh, I gotta move my foot. Move my foot. To me, you can play that game, type deal. But the reason I'm showing this one right here, if we're actually fighting someone, not boxing, not kickboxing, not things rules. If you're squared up with someone, you do this right here.